Hello! We are so excited to show you our native speech capabilities. Welcome back to the English journey. Today, we are discussing how to turn your first waking hour into your most powerful tool for fluency. My name is Anna, and I am here to guide you through the perfect morning routine to improve your English.
And I am Abel. I am so glad to be here with you, Anna. Most of us feel like we don't have enough time in the day to study. Today, we want to talk about how small, simple habits in the morning can create massive results in your English speaking skills without adding more stress to your life.
That is exactly right, Abel. And I want to start by saying something that I truly believe with all of my experience as a language teacher. The biggest mistake most English learners make is waiting for the perfect moment to study. They tell themselves, I will study tonight when I have 2 free hours, or I will start next week when things are less busy. But that perfect moment almost never comes. Life is always busy. There's always something happening. What we want to show you today is that you do not need 2 free hours. You do not need a classroom. You do not need to sit down with a textbook at all. What you need is your morning, and you already have that.
I really connect with what you're saying, Anna. I remember when I was first seriously trying to improve my English, I kept thinking I needed to sign up for a class or buy a specific program or find a tutor. And I did try some of those things, but honestly, the mornings were a complete waste for me. I would wake up, immediately look at my phone, scroll through social media in my native language, get confused and tired before I even got out of bed, and then rush to get ready. By the time I left the house, I had not done a single thing in English, and I wondered why my progress felt so slow.
And that experience you're describing, Abel, is so incredibly common. You are not alone in that. In fact, most people who come to me and say, Anna, I study hard, but I'm not improving, when I look at their habits carefully, I see exactly what you described. The mornings are filled with what I call noise in the native language: social media feeds, messages from friends, news apps, all in the learner's first language. And then they wonder why English feels foreign and difficult when they try to use it later. What we are going to talk about today is how to flip that morning experience completely. We are going to show you how to make English the first real language your brain engages with deeply each day.
Before we get into the steps, Anna, can you explain something for me? Because I've heard you mention this before, and I find it really fascinating. You talk about the brain being more open in the morning. Can you explain what you mean by that? What is actually happening inside our heads when we first wake up?
Yes, absolutely. And I love this topic because the science behind it is so beautiful, and it gives you a real reason to believe in this routine. So let me explain this carefully. When you sleep, your brain goes through multiple cycles of rest and activity. During the later stages of sleep, particularly during what scientists call REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement, your brain is actually consolidating information. It's organizing everything you learned the day before. It's building connections between new information and old information. It's essentially doing maintenance and construction work at the same time. Now, when you wake up from that process, your brain is in a very unique state. Scientists and neuroscientists use the term neuroplasticity to describe the brain's ability to form new connections and pathways. Neuroplasticity is simply the scientific word for the brain's ability to change and adapt. Think of plasticity like wet clay. When clay is wet and fresh, you can shake it easily. You can add details, create new forms, make impressions. But when clay dries out, it becomes rigid. You cannot change its shape without breaking it. Your brain works in a very similar way. And in the morning, right after you wake up, your brain is in its most plastic and receptive state. It's the most open it will be all day to forming new linguistic habits and absorbing new sounds.
That's a really powerful image, the wet clay. So you're saying that what we put into our brain in those first moments after waking up has a stronger effect than what we put in later in the day.
Exactly. And there's another layer to this that I find equally fascinating. When you first wake up, your brain is transitioning from a theta brainwave state, which is the state of deep relaxation and light sleep, into an alpha state, which is the state of calm, relaxed awareness. In the alpha state, your mind is open, your defenses are low, your critical inner voice that says, I can't do this or I'm making mistakes, is much quieter than it will be later in the day when stress and responsibilities fill your mind. Language teachers have known for decades that a relaxed, low-stress environment is the ideal condition for language acquisition. In the morning, nature creates that environment for you automatically, completely for free.
So the morning isn't just about having time, it's about having the right kind of brain, the right mental environment.
Precisely. The morning gives you what I call a clean cognitive slate. Your brain has rested, it has organized, and it's hungry for new input. If you feed it English in that moment, it absorbs it in a deeper and lasting way than if you tried to study the same material at 9 o'clock at night when you're exhausted and your brain is cluttered with the events of the day. This is why so many successful language learners, when you study their habits carefully, have some form of English engagement as a core part of their morning. It's not an accident, it's biology working in their favor.
Okay, so I'm convinced. The morning matters. Now let's talk about what to actually do. What is step one?
Step one is what I call the input phase, and it's my personal favorite because it requires absolutely zero extra time in your day. Zero. Here's what it means. From the moment you start your morning routine, whether that's washing your face, making coffee, eating breakfast, packing your bag, getting dressed, whatever your personal routine looks like, from that very first moment, you press play on English audio, not your native language. English audio, a podcast, a news broadcast in slow English, an audiobook, a documentary, a YouTube video where someone is speaking naturally and at length in English, and you simply let it play.
So you're not sitting down and studying, you're just listening while you do the things you already do every morning.
Exactly. This is what language researchers call passive immersion, and don't let the word passive fool you into thinking it's not powerful. Passive immersion works because of something called the silent period, a concept first described by linguist Stephen Krashen. Krashen's research showed that before a learner can produce language confidently, they need to accumulate a massive amount of comprehensible input. That means hearing and reading English that is mostly understandable to you, but that also contains some new vocabulary and structures just above your current level. The brain needs to hear words hundreds and hundreds of times in natural contexts before it truly internalizes them. And the morning chore routine is the perfect, low-pressure window to accumulate those listening hours.
I want to share something here. I actually tried something like this a few months ago. I started listening to a podcast in English while I made breakfast, and I noticed something interesting. In the beginning, I felt like I wasn't really paying attention. The words were going in, but I was focused on frying my eggs or whatever. I felt a little guilty, like I wasn't studying properly.
And that feeling of guilt is completely understandable, and it's also completely unnecessary. Let me tell you why. Your brain is a parallel processor. When you're doing a simple, habitual physical task, like frying eggs or washing dishes, the cognitive part of your brain, the part that handles language, is actually quite free. It's not occupied by the physical task because those movements are so automatic for you. So the audio you are listening to is actually getting a significant portion of your mental attention, even when you feel like you're distracted. The research is very consistent on this point. Regular passive listening, even during chores, significantly improves listening comprehension and vocabulary recognition over time.
That makes me feel so much better. So what kind of content should people be choosing for this input phase?
Great question. The content needs to be at the right level, which language teachers call I+1, meaning input that is one step above your current level. Too easy and your brain switches off because there is no challenge. Too difficult and your brain gives up because it cannot find enough meaning to hold on to. For intermediate learners, I recommend slow-paced English podcasts, nature documentaries narrated in clear English, conversational interview shows, and storytelling podcasts. The key qualities to look for are clear pronunciation, natural rhythm, and topics that genuinely interest you. If you are passionate about cooking, listen to food podcasts in English. If you love travel, find travel storytelling content. Interest is fuel. When you care about the topic, your brain leans in and absorbs more deeply.
Okay, that makes complete sense. So step one is playing English audio from the moment your morning starts and using your routine shore time as listening time. What is step two?
Step two is what I love to call the self-talk ritual, and this one surprises people the most. It is also the step that produces the most noticeable and rapid improvement in spoken fluency. Here's what it involves. As you move through your morning, getting dressed, looking in the mirror, eating your breakfast, walking to your car or to public transport, you narrate what you are doing in English, out loud or quietly in your mind, depending on your situation. But out loud is more powerful.
Can you give us some examples of what this actually sounds like? Because I think it might sound a little strange to people at first.
Of course. So imagine you're standing in front of your bathroom mirror. Instead of just standing there silently or thinking in your native language, you begin describing your actions in English. You might say something like, "Okay, it is 7 in the morning. I am washing my face with cold water. The water is cold today. That feels really good. Now I'm going to dry my face with this towel. I need to remember to buy a new towel this week. Now I am brushing my teeth. I always brush for about 2 minutes. I prefer this mint-flavored toothpaste." And it goes on like that. Simple, present tense descriptions of ordinary actions.
That does sound a little strange the first time you try it, I'm not going to lie, but I can also see how it would work. You're essentially converting your internal thought process into English.
You have identified exactly why it works, Abel. And that phrase you just used, converting your internal thought process into English, that is the goal. That is what fluency actually is at its deepest level. Fluency is not knowing a list of words. Fluency is thinking in English. And thinking out loud in English during your morning routine is one of the most direct and effective training exercises for reaching that goal. When you think in your native language and then translate into English, there is always a delay, always a hesitation, always a slight awkwardness. But when you practice narrating your life in English every single morning, you begin to bypass the translation step. English thoughts start to arise naturally and directly.
I want to ask something here because I think some people listening might feel embarrassed about this. What if you share a space with other people? What if your family or housemates are around and you do not want to talk to yourself out loud?
That's such a practical and important question, and I've heard it from so many learners. First, I want to say that if you can do it out loud, please do. There's genuine scientific value in actually forming the sounds with your mouth and hearing your own voice. It activates motor memory, which means your tongue and lips are practicing the movements of English pronunciation, not just your mind. But if speaking out loud feels truly impossible due to your environment, then the practice still works when done silently as internal narration. The key is to be deliberate and consistent. Do not just think vaguely in English. Form complete sentences in your mind. Subject, verb, object, specific details. Actually think the words, not just the ideas.
And when you're doing this self-talk, do you think you should stop yourself to correct mistakes, or should you just keep going?
Keep going. This is critical, especially in the morning. The self-talk ritual is not a grammar exercise. It's a fluency exercise. The goal is to keep the English flowing without interruption, to build the internal momentum of language production. When you stop every time you're unsure of a word, you are training your brain to stop. You are reinforcing hesitation. Instead, do what native speakers do when they're unsure. They use a simpler word. They describe around the word they don't know. They say something like, "What's the word I'm looking for?" Or, "You know, that thing you use for," and they keep going. This is a real and valuable communication skill, and the morning self-talk ritual is the perfect safe place to practice it without any social pressure.
I really love that. Use simpler words. Describe around the gap. Keep going. That's genuinely useful advice that I can apply right away. So what is step 3?
Step 3 is the 5-minute journal, and it's the shortest step in terms of time, but it builds a bridge that is absolutely essential for full language development. Here's what you do. You take 5 minutes, it doesn't need to be more than 5 minutes, and you write down 3 intentions for your day in English. Not a diary entry, not a grammar exercise, just 3 clear, simple sentences about what you plan to do or experience today.
Can you give us some examples of what those 3 sentences might look like?
Absolutely. They might look like this. Number 1, today I will have a meeting with my colleague about the project, and I will try to stay calm and focused. Number 2, I want to try a new recipe for dinner tonight, and I will look up the instructions in English. Number 3, this evening I plan to read for 30 minutes before I go to sleep. That's it. 3 sentences. They can be short, they can be simple, the grammar does not need to be perfect, but they must be written, not typed. Handwriting activates a different and deeper kind of cognitive engagement than typing does.
Why does it matter that they are handwritten? I would have just grabbed my phone and typed notes.
The research on this is really compelling. A study from Princeton University found that students who took handwritten notes retained information significantly better than students who typed the same notes. The reason is that handwriting is slower, and that slower speed forces your brain to process and synthesize the information rather than just copy it mechanically. When you are writing in English by hand, you're not just recording words, you are constructing them. You feel the shape of the letters. You feel the rhythm of the sentence as you form it. This creates a much stronger neural pathway than typing does. And for language learning specifically, that deeper processing is exactly what you want.
So you're basically making the English experience more physical and embodied, not just mental.
Beautifully said. Language is not just a mental activity, it is a physical one. Speaking uses your mouth, your breath, your throat. Writing uses your hand, your arm, and your posture. Reading uses your eyes and your focus. The more physically engaged your body is with the language, the deeper and more durable the learning becomes. The 5-minute journal gives English a physical, tactile presence in your morning.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Anna, because I think it is the elephant in the room for a lot of people. I told you that my biggest morning problem was immediately picking up my phone, and I know I am not the only one. Checking messages, scrolling through social media, reading news, it is almost like an automatic reflex now. The phone is right there, the alarm goes off, and the phone is in your hand before you are even fully awake. How do you actually fight that habit?
This is one of the most important questions we could possibly discuss, because that phone habit is genuinely one of the most significant obstacles to morning language learning. And I want to be honest about why it is so powerful and so difficult to break. Your phone is designed, quite deliberately and with a great deal of psychological research behind it, to capture your attention and to release small amounts of the feel-good chemical dopamine every time you check it. A new message, a like on a photo, an interesting headline, each of these triggers a tiny reward response in your brain, and your brain loves rewards. So the phone habit is not a moral failing or a lack of willpower. It is a very sophisticated biological trap that billions of people have fallen into.
That honestly makes me feel less guilty about it. It's not that I'm lazy, it's that my phone is very cleverly designed to capture me.
Exactly. And the solution is not willpower. Trying to resist through willpower alone is exhausting and usually fails over time. The solution is what behavioral scientists call environment design. You change your environment so that the desired behavior, in this case engaging with English, becomes the easiest and most automatic option, while the undesired behavior, scrolling in your native language, becomes slightly more difficult or less immediately accessible. Here are some very specific practical strategies for this. First, charge your phone outside of your bedroom. When your phone is not within arm's reach the moment you wake up, you break the reflex of grabbing it. You have to actually get up, walk to another room, and make a deliberate decision to pick it up. That small physical barrier is surprisingly powerful at interrupting automatic behavior.
Second, replace your phone alarm with a separate alarm clock. A basic, inexpensive alarm clock on your bedside table means you no longer need your phone next to your bed at all. Third, the night before, the very last thing you do before sleeping, you open your English podcast app or audio player and queue up the content you want to listen to in the morning. So when you do pick up your phone, the first thing waiting for you is English audio, not your social media feed.
That is such a clever reframe. Instead of trying to stop yourself from picking up the phone, you change what the phone offers you first.
Yes, you're not resisting the habit, you're redirecting it. The habit of picking up the phone stays intact, but now the phone gives you English input instead of native language scrolling. Over time, your brain starts to associate picking up the phone in the morning with the pleasure of interesting English content, and that becomes its own positive reinforcement loop.
I want to talk about something you mentioned briefly before, Anna. You used the phrase momentum. You said that using English in the morning creates momentum for the rest of the day. Can you explain what you mean by that in more detail?
Yes, and this concept is genuinely one of the most motivating ideas in behavioral science, and it applies perfectly to language learning. Here's the principle. Every time you successfully complete a behavior, no matter how small, your brain receives a small signal of competence, a small internal message that says, I am someone who does this, I am capable of this. And that signal makes the next instance of that same behavior slightly easier and slightly more automatic. So when you wake up at 7 in the morning and you listen to English audio for 20 minutes while making breakfast, and then you narrate your morning routine to yourself in English, and then you write 3 intentions in your journal in English, by 7:30 or 8 o'clock, you have already used English in 3 different ways. Your brain has received multiple signals of success. And here's the fascinating part. Those early morning successes create a psychological momentum that carries into the rest of your day. You start to notice English in your environment more. You're more likely to try to read a sign or a menu in English. You're more likely to engage with English content during a lunch break. You're more likely to attempt a conversation in English if the opportunity arises.
So it's like once you start rolling, it's easier to keep rolling. The morning routine doesn't just improve your English in the morning, it actually improves your English engagement for the entire day.
Exactly. And there is a specific psychological term for this. It is called the keystone habit, a concept developed by journalist and author Charles Duhigg in his research on habit formation. A keystone habit is a single habit that, when practiced consistently, creates a cascade of other positive behaviors. Your morning English routine is a keystone habit for language learning. It sets the linguistic tone for your entire day. Research on habit formation consistently shows that people who anchor their practice to the morning are more consistent over weeks and months than people who try to study at random or undefined times during the day. The morning gives your practice an anchor point, and that anchor makes consistency far more achievable.
I love the idea of a keystone habit. Now, Anna, you mentioned something in our preparation for today that I was really curious about. You called it the coffee conversation. What is that?
The coffee conversation is one of my absolute favorite exercises, and it sounds simple, but it is genuinely one of the most effective fluency builders I have ever encountered. Here's how it works. While you're having your morning coffee or tea or whatever your morning drink is, you create a short, fictional conversation with yourself. You play both roles. You imagine you're meeting a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger, and you have a brief social exchange in English.
Can we actually do an example of this right now? Can you show us what it sounds like?
Of course. So imagine you're sitting at your kitchen table with your coffee. You might begin like this. You play the role of yourself. Good morning. How are you doing today? Then you play the role of the other person. I am doing really well, thank you. I had a great sleep last night. How about you? Then back to yourself. I slept okay, but I woke up a little earlier than I wanted to. I'm happy I have this coffee, though. It's helping me wake up. Then the other person. I know that feeling. Do you have a busy day today? Then yourself. Yes, I have a meeting this afternoon and I need to prepare for it. But first, I want to enjoy this quiet morning. Does it make sense when I say it like that?
That is wonderful.
And what strikes me about it is how natural and social those sentences are. It's not textbook English, it's the kind of English you actually use when you talk to people.
That is precisely the goal of the coffee conversation. Most English learners practice the formal, structured language of textbooks. They learn to write essays and understand grammar rules, but they struggle enormously with the informal, spontaneous, conversational English of real social situations, greeting someone, asking how they are, making small talk, sharing observations about your day. These conversational micro-exchanges are the foundation of social fluency, and they almost never appear in traditional study materials. The coffee conversation trains your brain to produce this kind of language naturally and without preparation, because you're doing it every single morning in a low-pressure, private setting. You're giving yourself permission to be imperfect, to pause, to search for words, and to keep going. And over weeks and months of this practice, those same phrases and conversational patterns become automatic. When you're in a real social situation and someone says, "How are you doing today?" your brain doesn't freeze and search desperately for an answer. It reaches naturally for the language you've rehearsed 100 times over your morning coffee.
I have genuinely never heard of this technique before, but it makes so much sense. You're rehearsing real life in a safe space.
Yes, and I want to add something important here. As your confidence grows with the coffee conversation, you can make it progressively more complex. In the beginning, you might just practice basic greetings and responses. After a month, you add more complex topics. You discuss your plans, your opinions, your feelings about something in the news. After another month, you challenge yourself to introduce new vocabulary words that you've been learning into the conversation. The coffee conversation grows with you. It evolves from a beginner exercise into an advanced fluency workout, and it never takes more than 5 to 10 minutes of your morning.
Anna, I want to ask one more question before we bring everything together, because I know some people listening might be thinking, this all sounds great, but I'm genuinely not a morning person. I wake up confused and slow and grumpy. Can you still do these routines if your brain is foggy in the morning?
Yes, and I want to address this so directly and so honestly. Morning brain fog is real. It's a physiological experience, not an excuse. When you first wake up, your body is still producing melatonin, the sleep hormone, and your core body temperature has not fully risen yet. This creates the groggy, slow feeling that many people experience. It's completely normal, and it affects almost everyone to some degree. The key is not to fight the fog immediately with intense effort. That will feel impossible, and you'll give up quickly. Instead, the routine I've described today is specifically designed to work with the fog, not against it. Notice that step 1, the input phase, requires absolutely nothing from you except pressing play and letting English audio fill the background of your environment. That's your input phase. As you move through your physical routine, washing, dressing, eating, you narrate your actions and thoughts in English, either out loud or silently in your mind. That's your self-talk ritual. At some point during your morning, you sit down for 5 minutes and handwrite 3 intentions for your day in English. That's your 5-minute journal. And finally, while you enjoy your morning drink, you hold a short, gentle, fictional conversation with yourself in English, practicing the social language of real human connection. That's your coffee conversation. Together, these 4 steps take between 20 and 35 minutes of your morning, and most of that time overlaps with things you were already going to do anyway.
So there's really no excuse not to try this, is there? The time is already there in the morning, we're just filling it with English instead of filling it with nothing or with our native language.
Precisely. And I want to leave you with one final thought about why consistency in the morning is so transformative. Fluency is not a destination you arrive at after passing a certain test or completing a certain number of lessons. Fluency is a relationship. It's a living, ongoing, daily relationship with the English language. And like any relationship, it deepens and becomes more natural and more rewarding the more time you spend in it.
Every morning that you choose English, you're strengthening that relationship. You're telling your brain that English is not a subject you study occasionally, it's a language you live in. And when English becomes something you live in, even for 30 minutes each morning, the transformation in your speaking, your confidence, and your overall fluency becomes not just possible, but inevitable.
And that is the most encouraging thing I've heard about language learning in a very long time, Anna. It's not about being perfect, it's not about being naturally talented or having more time than everyone else. It's about showing up every morning, turning on that audio, speaking a few sentences to yourself, writing 3 lines in a notebook, and having a quiet little conversation over your coffee. Those small, consistent choices are the foundation of a fluent life. And starting tomorrow morning, every single one of us has the power to make them.